everyone, and welcome to American University Library's workshop on researching the down ballot. So today we're going to go through why you should care about the down ballot and a number of resources that are available to you to help you be an informed citizen. But first, we're going to start with some quick introductions. My name is Gwendolyn Reese, and I am the Director of Research, Teaching, and Learning here at American University Library. And my colleague.
And I'm Catherine Ray, and I am one of the research reference librarians at American University Library. Welcome.
So we both care very, very deeply about citizen engagement and our democracy, and that is why we are offering this to you today. And on behalf of both of us, I just want to thank you for spending your time learning how to be an informed, responsible citizen in our democracy. So the first thing I want to quickly talk a little bit about is why should you care about the down ballot? So most of the attention that is paid both in our media and generally the attention that all of us pay to elections is often focused on the presidential races and sometimes in our federal legislature. But actually, a lot of the issues that we care most deeply about and decisions that are going to affect you most deeply are happening at the level of local government because of the structure of our democracy with federalism. So for example, if you care deeply about the integrity of our democracy, then issues like gerrymandering, that is at your state legislative level, is where those kinds of decisions are decided. Similarly, if you care very much about the Electoral College, that is in the Constitution, but many state legislatures are beginning to pass laws that will bind all of their electoral votes to whoever wins the popular vote. In other kinds of topics, if you believe that Black Lives Matter, and we believe that Black Lives Matter and are precious, then you probably care about things like policing reform. And the reality is that the people that are going to be negotiating with like police unions and will be most influential in policing reform, it's not at the federal government level. It's your people in City Hall. It's, you know, your city council members, your mayors, and so forth. Similarly, if you care very deeply about something like the school to prison pipeline, you want to be paying close attention to who are you electing to your board of education, because a lot of the kinds of disciplinary policies and so forth and emphases there, that's where it's going to be decided. So there's lots of very important reasons to care about your local officials. Also, just to be clear, you know, when you contact your local officials with an issue, with a concern, your voice carries a lot more weight, honestly, at like City Hall than it does in the chambers of Congress. Not that you shouldn't be contacting them too, but just to give you a sense, it's your power is much stronger in the local level. Catherine, did I miss anything?
Sounds very good. I would like to heartily endorse everything Gwendolyn has said so far, and praise each one of you for looking at this, because it shows that you're willing to pay attention and participate. That's the only way we can maintain our democracy.
Absolutely. So Catherine, if you would like to go first in showing them Vote 411, and we should probably spell out the URL since they don't have the handout on the video.
Okay. So there are many different ways you can find information on the down ballot candidates, and one of the ways is to search for voter guides. But searching for a voter guide is like searching for the right academic article. You have to use all of your critical thinking skills when you evaluate those voter guides. So I'd like to show you one that I'm particularly fond of, which is Vote 411, and I will share my screen in a moment. Vote 411 is the nationwide program used by the League of Women Voters to prepare voter guides. Okay, share my screen. So here we have the library's homepage, and I am just going to go up here and type in vote411.org. And in the olden days of landlines, if you wanted to reach the operator and get information, you dialed 411. And that's where this product is named after, that legacy of information. Okay, so Vote 411 has all kinds of information. It can help you figure out how to register to vote and where to register to vote, how to check the status of your registration, which is something that everyone should do because we're having voter purges fairly regularly, and perhaps you were off at college and you didn't vote in the last election. Lo and behold, you might find yourself no longer on the rolls. So you should always check periodically to make sure you're still registered, that perhaps you've moved, perhaps you've even moved to a different state. So you need to make sure that the registration is up to date and current. You can also find out where you vote. So if I were to click on my polling places for DC, it would tell me where the location of the drop boxes and the voting centers where I can vote in person. But today, I want to focus on voter guides, and that's here, find what's on your ballot. So I'm going to pretend that I live at the Tenley Library and put in that address. 4450 Wisconsin Avenue Northwest. And I'm just using Washington, D.C. as an example, but we could use any city or state. If they have a League of Women Voters there, there'll be questions. If not, you're just going to find out what's on your ballot. And if there's no League of Women Voters in your jurisdiction, you should start one. Right. So I've entered the address where I live at the public library. I'm going to click submit. And here it is. My voter guide, Vote 411, gives you the option of seeing the instructions in either Spanish or English. And that's really an important thing. You can also use it on your phone or on a tablet as well as on the web. Now, I'm going to, if I wanted to see every single person running in the District of Columbia, I could use the hamburger to find all the races and all the candidates. But we have over 500 candidates running, standing for office in DC on November 3rd. So we just want to know what we have the opportunity to vote for. So I'm going to go to My Races. And here are the different races that I can expect to see on my ballot. The top of the ballot, we know, the president, we don't need to look at, but this is what we call the down ballot. Here's your at-large city council member. Here's your member of the State Board of Education, schools to prison pipeline. These are very important people for you to know and to pick the person who most closely represents the way you feel. So let's just start with the Board of Education. If this were really your guide, you'd step through it and have a complete, but I won't bore you with that right now. So we're going to go straight to the State Board of Education. And here are the people who've chosen to run. Now, when you're looking at a voter guide, you need to look at who was invited to participate. Did they ask everyone? Did they just ask women? Did they just ask Republicans? Do you want to ask yourself, are these the candidate's own words, or did an editorial review board write it? In the case of the League of Women Voters, we invite every DC candidate who's qualified from the Board of Elections, so every single one of them. But you'll notice not necessarily every single one of them chooses to participate in our voter guide, but we still include them because they will be on the ballot. You can click on one candidate and you can see the information. We only publish information that the candidate provides. If they don't put their website in there, we don't go looking for it because they obviously don't want it in there. And then we ask questions. All right, so we're interested in DC in the achievement gap. We have a huge gap in achievement. What does this person want to do about it? So I read that and I say, well, I think he might be okay, but I'm going to compare him to what Troy Murphy thinks. So I'm going to compare, and they'll put them side by side. So then I can decide between these two, Well, now, see, Troy Murphy put in his picture, but he didn't answer any of the questions. So let's go to somebody. Let's see if Mr. Perry answered the questions. Okay, now Mr. Perry took us up on it, on the opportunity to include a video, a YouTube. Some people have their kids interview them, it's adorable. And some people do a more professional job, but anybody can put a YouTube video in. And then we can compare the way these two candidates. So after I've clicked through all the candidates and I've decided which one I like the best, my voter guide here, Vote 411, gives me the opportunity to select this candidate. And then I can go back to the next race. In this case, this says United States Senator, but this is a shadow representative because we have no senators for DC. So the people we elect for this position are supposed to advocate for us. So I could compare these two and decide which one I want to choose, go to the next race, and step through as you can see how it goes. With each one, I would mark my ballot because I'll show you what you can do at the end. DC has an initiative on the ballot this year. So here we've explained the initiative and we can choose for or against. And then I go up here to finish. And I have the opportunity to then put in my telephone number to text it to myself, my choices to myself, or email it to me. And that way, when you go to vote, you can do it very quickly and very efficiently, and you don't have to think about it. Some ballots, like the state of Florida, can sometimes be multiple pages, and you want to make sure that you've got it all marked before. If everyone did that, the lines would go much faster. Okay, so when you're looking at a voter guide, we're talking about the 411 has the voter's own words. We don't charge any fees. We don't to the candidate or for people who are using it, and we don't take any advertising. So we're not influenced by any particular group. So I encourage you to find as many different voter guides as you can. So you might say to me, okay, we told me about Vote for one, what else is there out there?
So Catherine, can I just real fast put in a couple plugs for the Vote 411, because I really do love this resource. And I just want to re-emphasize that when they send out those questions, they're the same questions for every candidate, which is great because you can really do close. And then the other thing that I'm just going to say personally, and it's personal opinion because I use this all the time, is that when somebody doesn't bother answering the questions from the League of Women Voters, I will say that I take that as a sign that they may not pay much attention to me. So that is something, at least for me personally, that I also am paying attention to who didn't bother, because I know that the League reaches out over and over again.
That's right. I edit this guide along with my husband, and we have a group of about 10 volunteers who literally nag and nudge the candidates, starting with the first email that they receive. So we really do try to get 100% participation. And I know the candidates get a lot of requests for voter guide information, but after all, no one is campaigning door to door now. And if they can't, we don't ever ask gotcha questions. We don't ever ask, we ask only questions that someone who's running for office should be able to answer. If you want to be a council member in the District of Columbia and you don't have a position on transportation, you have no business running for office. Okay, that's my idea. Okay, so how else do you find voter guides? In this case, we can just try Google. So I'm going to use quotation marks to search as a phrase. Suppose I live in Arkansas. I'm going to see what Google will give me for voter guides. Now Google does have a nice feature where when you do that, it comes up with how to vote and all this really good information like early deadlines and things like that. But then we can see there are different kinds of voter guides. This one is produced by the Family Council. This one here, iVoter Guide. Okay, after I've looked at least 100, 200 voter guides, I've pretty much found that if it has the word family or family values in it, it tends to be a more conservative voter guide, which is good. You should look at many different points of view. Probably if you watch MSNBC and Fox News, probably the truth is somewhere in the middle. So you should always look at different varieties, but you probably don't need to look at 10 different conservative voter guides. You could just pick one or two. But here's one that's kind of interesting because this is called the iVoter Guide. Maybe that's something different. So I'll click on that one. Okay, all right, so far looks like a voter guide. Let's see, now what I want to do when I'm evaluating this is just like I would do with an academic article. You know, who wrote this? Was this person have any particular credentials or point of view, or, you know, what lens, through what lens should I be viewing this? So let's see what we can find out about it. Good information here. So let's see if we can find out about us. Let's look at our team, see if that reveals anything. Okay. Okay, the founder and chairman of the board of directors has dedicated his whole life to helping Christians be better stewards of their God-ordained authority to vote. So now we know the lens through which this voter guide is being produced. Now, you can also try finding specific kinds of races. Like, for instance, one of the most crucial elected officials, like in Pennsylvania and in many other states, Ohio, we found out too, they elect their judges. Now, contemplate that for just a moment. You have the power to elect a judge. So you want to make sure that you elect someone who represents you and the way you believe and feel. So how might you do that? So let's go back to our friend Google. Okay. So let's see what we've got. Here we have PennsylvaniaFamily.org. I think we've got family covered. Let's see what else we can find. Let's see. That one looks kind of interesting. I like the idea that it has a .org. How many times does she fall for that? That it has a .org file extension. It means it's an organization. Now, that may be changing sometime because the people who bought out those domain names may be changing that. But for right now, that means it's an organization as opposed to .com, which is a business. So let's take a look at that. All right, judicial election information, who's on the ballot, how are judges chosen? That's a good thing for us to know. And what things to consider when you're evaluating candidates, other good information. And then where to find relevant information. I really like that it's telling you to go to the Bar Association, because that's also going to be a nonpartisan, as reasonably fair as one could expect. And also it points out to us that some cities have their own bar associations. So if you're in Philly, you would certainly, for local judges, be wanting to look at the Philadelphia Bar Association. And putting in a plug for the League of Women Voters, so that's good with me. So it goes on to show you the candidates and takes you to their websites and what counties they represent. So you can find good information in Google as long as you are smart about the way you search. Now, one last thing I want to show you is, suppose you want to try to find the voter guide that's done by your local government, because many of them do produce them. Maybe we can find it that way. Now, we looked at voter guides in like Arkansas and scrolled through quite a few, but I didn't see one that looked like it came from the government of Arkansas. But there's a website, a search engine that we can use, search.usa.gov, search.usa.gov, that will search only for websites that have .gov or .mil file extensions. So if I go to that and I put in my same kind of search, and what I'm going to get here is voter services, general election for Washington County, State Board of Elections. Here we go, sample ballot and voter guide for Montgomery County, which is contiguous to DC here. So you'll find good information by using search.usa.gov. And I recommend that you use that because our government produces information on business, ecology, agriculture, everything. And like, for instance, if you have a problem in your garden, you can get to the cooperative extension services here and get good government information on a vast variety of topics. So now Gwendolyn's going to tell us about another really equally fabulous place to find information on your down ballot.
Great, thank you.
Stop sharing.
Wonderful. Okay, so I am now going to share my screen. And the resource I am going to be showing you here is Ballotpedia, and that is BALLOTPEDIA.org. So ballotpedia.org. And one of the first things, as we had talked about, whenever you're looking at any of the sites, you always want to have some sort of a quick evaluation, or maybe not so quick evaluation of, is this a site that I should trust? And so generally, one of the first things I do is I look for something someplace, and it should be relatively easy to find, that tells you about. And when I click on About Ballotpedia, and we are waiting for it to come up. There we go. So it tells me very quickly that this is firmly dedicated to neutrality. They also have information about why they are a nonprofit. So they're nonprofit, nonpartisan. And in this case, I think that is important. And it also tells me, and I always want to know, who's paying for this? So the Lucy Burns Institute, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization, is the main funder. So if I click on that, then I can find out more specifically about the Lucy Burns Institute. And there's quite a bit here. And I also just want to point out that some of the things that I really like is that I've got access to their annual reports. And I also have information on how they are funded and their leadership. And I really like the fact that it also is linking me over to GuideStar and Charity Navigator, which are two excellent sites for understanding the finances that are behind nonprofits. So I've done some of this work, and when I am reading all of this, I feel fairly confident that I am looking at, which is why I'm recommending this one, a quality, nonpartisan source. Now it does have ads, but I still found that the information here, I think, is quite good. So when I go over here, because we're talking about the down ballot, like the League of Women Voters Vote for one site, there is an entry here for what's on your ballot. And so I'm going to click on that. And it is going to give me options for, like, you know, if I need to register to vote or something along these lines. But what I want to do at the moment, I am going to pretend that I live on Volusia in Dayton, Ohio, this is where I grew up. And it's going to say, okay, well, we have an upcoming election. If you needed information about, you know, how to register, where to go, you can get that there. But at the moment, what I want to do is I'm going to click on the information for the November 3rd election, and it's going to pull up here are the people for the various races. Now, like I said, we know about the president. That's not really what we're interested in. Now, they do have here a House race for the federal Congress. But as we had mentioned, they also have a couple of judge races for the Supreme Court going on. And there's the Ohio State Senate, which we mentioned things like gerrymandering and so forth, the Ohio House, and then we have a Court of Appeals. So we have quite a few different races going on. Now, if there were any ballot measures, or if there was something like Board of Education vote right now, they should also end up there. But what I'm going to do is I want to show you a couple of different things. Now, here's our incumbent in one of these Ohio State Supreme Court. So I just want to show you the kinds of things that are in here. When I click on it, it's going to do a few different things. So first of all, it's going to give me some information about her. This is her education, and it is telling me about her career, her former positions. This is information specific to the elections that she's been in. But I want to point out here is some interesting information about who is funding her. And so I might be interested in knowing that. Also, you can see her endorsements, and that tells me quite a bit about what her values are and who is going to endorse her. And I can do the same on her contender. I'm also going to point out here that at least in 2012, we have a judicial poll that gives us some information here about her, and there are some campaign themes where she has the opportunity to input those. In this case, she did not. So this candidate connection is very similar to the questions that are distributed at Vote 411, and in this case, Justice French did not fill those out. If I go back and I want to do some comparison, I can then look at the opposition candidate, and you can see similar kinds of categories here, information about the election. But in this case, Justice Brunner has decided to go ahead and submit a number of pieces of information from to Ballotpedia, including these are the key messages that Justice Brunner has in running for the Supreme Court. Again, we see the funders, and here is that candidate connection where they have sent questions, and in this case, she has answered them. And if there were endorsements, those would also be there. So I also just want to quickly point out one other thing, because I think it's useful. And for this one, we're going to need to go into a legislative person. So I'm going to click here on Mr. Niraj Antani, who is the incumbent of the state Senate race. Now, this is primarily important for incumbents, which is why I am showing Mr. Antani here. And that is in addition to kind of the biography and so forth. You see, these are the committee assignments. You obviously have to have been elected to have those. And you also have here, did I go past it? The campaign themes. Sorry, I may have zoomed by it. I want to be sure. You have, okay, here we go. You have some of the sponsored legislation. And for some reason, this was showing yesterday, but if I go over here, I could find more information. I don't know why it's not showing today. It was yesterday where it showed me a box that included all of the bills that Mr. Antani had sponsored, which is kind of an important thing to get some sense about what is the kind of work that your incumbent is actually doing. Now, I do want to point out really quickly in the campaign finance, one of the things to just know is that whoever is the incumbent is likely to have more money coming in from local business. So that is no matter which party is in power or which party the incumbent belongs to. Typically the incumbent gets more, but you can tell a fair amount based on who is giving them money. So those are the primary things here for Ballotpedia. And like I said, it does give that local campaign finance. It gives you the local for the incumbents, kind of what it is that they have sponsored, what their committee appointments are. And so it gives a fair amount of very good information on the down ballot. And it will also do that for ballot measures. If there are ballot measures that are in the jurisdiction, those would be listed as well. So I'm going to give this back to Catherine.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention, Gwendolyn was talking about campaign finance. Most state governments and many local governments have their own office of campaign finance. The Federal Election Commission, FEC.gov, has the federal, the congressional races, anything that's a federal race will be FEC, but if you want to follow the money, you should take a look at also trying the search.usa.gov, because that covers local governments as well as the federal government. Okay, so everything Gwendolyn and I have shown you so far is freely available to the public. But since you are associated with AU, either student, faculty, or staff, you have access to our many, many databases that the library offers. So I'm going to show you a couple of those where you can find even more information. All right, so if we go back to the library's homepage, american.edu/library. And since I know which databases I want to show you, I know which databases I want to show you, I am going to go straight to search databases, which is an A to Z list of the 584 different databases that the AU Library has to offer to you. So the first one I want to take a look at is Congressional Quarterly, which is CQ. All right, CQ, Congressional Quarterly, does many different databases. They're highly respected, not really scholarly exactly, but very well respected and academically appropriate databases for you to use to find out information. For instance, someone asked us earlier about voting. Here's another great place to check out voting statistics. But in this case, I want to show you the Congress collection. Now this works best if you want to evaluate your sitting member of Congress. So how you can find out about whether the guy should or the woman should be reelected. It's having a little moment here. There we go. And the one that you'll probably find most useful is where it says analyze data. So you can compare candidates, you can find out how closely they align with the president. There are all kinds of information about Congress. And like here, for instance, there's just so much there that I'm going to let you explore on your own. But the CQ Congress collection, finding information on sitting Congress people. Okay, the next one I want to show you is our ProQuest US news stream. There's really not one good single source for finding information from local papers. We have entire databases of the New York Times, of the Wall Street Journal, the big ones, but to find the local papers can be a challenge. So when I use the search databases, it takes me to ProQuest has bundled US, Canadian, and the federal, US, Canadian, and international papers together. And we really don't want all that. We just want the US. So I wouldn't go directly this way to ProQuest Newsstream. I am going to go back to the library's homepage and put it into the main search box. Once again, using the quotation marks to search as a phrase. So the title of this database is ProQuest US Newsstream. And when I'm searching, I'm going to be looking for the green online link because that means that you can find it here at AU. All right, so that won't work. Here we go. My available online. Okay, now suppose I wanted to find out a little bit more about Justice French in Ohio. See what I can find in the local newspapers. But when you use local newspapers, you also always have to use your critical eye because some local newspapers are very conservative and some are very liberal. So you're going to get different points of view from the newspaper as well. But that's why you need to search broadly, and that's why searching down ballot is a big investment in time, and you're to be congratulated for doing that. All right, so let's just use our quotation marks again. Okay, so I've got Judith French and Ohio and court, and I put an asterisk there because I'm not sure that it's going to be court or courts. So I want to make sure it was search for either one of those, so I put an asterisk. And as far as dates, I don't know how many Judith Frenches there are in Ohio, but there might have been some in the 1880s, and I'm not interested in them. So let's say the last 3 years. And give search. All right. Who's running in the Supreme Court? Here's a nice article from the News Journal. Here's one that where they're criticizing her. So good information. Now, the couple things to keep in mind when you're searching the newspapers. They don't offer you subject headings and keywords like they do in an academic article. In the newspapers, they're only searching word for word. So the word has to be in the article. It's unlikely that they would say a group of adolescents were misbehaving. But if you're looking at academic articles, you probably would use the word adolescents if you're looking for young people. So just think about the way it would appear. The example I always use in the college writing class is if the newspaper article said the Klan was active last night, and you put in Ku Klux Klan, and Ku and Klux is not in that article, it's not going to come up, even though in our brains we know it's the same thing. The computer only is looking for what's there. All right, so that's ProQuest US Newsstream. And so the very last one I want to show you is called VoxGov, VoxGov. I have absolutely no idea what that means, but that's what we're looking for. VoxGov. And what you can find in this database is the social media and the tweets. And I think that if you check your candidates, see if they've tweeted anything and what kinds of thing they tweet is very revealing. So I leave this to you to search further, but it can be a good source for finding out information about your candidates. Okay, and I think that is what I wanted to show you, that are subscription databases that you can use as long as you're affiliated with American University. And I'll turn it back over to Gwendolyn.
Great. I am going to show you one more free resource. It is all about campaign finance, and that is opensecrets.org, and the URL is exactly the name, opensecrets.org. So this is brought to us by the Center for Responsive Politics, and this is a nonprofit organization whose mission is all about trying to understand the influence of money on politics. So they do a lot of work on finance and dark money, PACs, and also lobbying activity. Now, the one thing here is that Open Secrets is only covering the federal government. So, and they also talk a lot about the revolving door, I should mention that, between government and into the lobbying industry. So they are only dealing with the federal government. And that is one of the reasons I wanted to point out in Ballotpedia. And as Catherine said, each jurisdiction often will have their own state campaign finance offices, but that's where you can get more of the local. But I'm interested in the congressional committees at this moment. So I'm going to show you some of that. Now, you can see here, there's all sorts of very interesting information, but I'm going to go for this use case up here to the menu, and I'm going to choose the congressional elections. And when I get into the congressional races, in this case, again, I am pretending that I am where I grew up, since I actually live in the District of Columbia and we don't have voting members of Congress. And I'm going to go to Ohio, and I will see here that neither of Ohio's governors are up, but we do have all of the state, the House positions are up. And I always kind of like to do a quick overview just to see if anything looks a little out of whack. And I can see here immediately that whatever's going on in Ohio District 4, like they have way, way, way more money than anyone else. And so I might be kind of curious about that. And if I didn't know, that is the one in which Jim Jordan is the incumbent, and he has a ton of outside money. So I'm always kind of interested in the ones that are like way out of alignment with what else is going on in the state. But I also see here, I'm kind of curious about this one, Ohio District 1. And I'm going to pretend for a moment that that is where I am, because there's some stuff here that I just would like to point out. So here we have an incumbent, and the challenger is pretty close, honestly, in a lot of ways, to the amount of money raised by the incumbent. And I'm going to say, you know, our system at the moment is set up so that most people, once they become incumbents, tend to get reelected, and they tend to raise a lot more money because, as I had mentioned before, whoever is the incumbent tends to receive more donations and contributions from local businesses. So the fact that they're this close says to me is like, oh, I bet this is a swing district. And indeed it is. So when I get here, there's a couple different things that I might be interested in kind of exploring if I were a resident of the District 1 for the state of Ohio. I'd be very interested in outside spending. That's the first thing I might be interested in seeing, because I'm curious about, like, we have a lot of money coming into this race from people that are not the people that whoever wins this race are supposed to represent. So I want to have some sort of understanding about who are these people, and you know, who are these organizations, and to whom might they be beholden. So one of the first things I see here, which I also just find fascinating, so you have a lot of outside money, and an awful lot of it is being run on attack ads. So that again says to me that we are dealing with a situation in which we are in one of those swing vote areas that's drawing a lot of money. Now, the next thing I might be curious about is like, okay, well, who are these groups? And you can see who's giving money to which group. And I could go over here, which might be a useful thing to do, and kind of sort by the amount of money so that I see the major donors up top. And you have some of the ones that are, you know, you have the Republican and the Democrats. You also have here women vote. So you have like a group that is definitely dedicated towards getting women in order. And I know who a lot of these groups are, but let's say I didn't know who the Club Growth for Action is. So what I might be interested in doing is jumping over and just doing, what is Club Growth, Club for Growth? And if I didn't know it, it quickly says, oh, well, it is an economic conservative organization. And if I were to click on that, then it would tell me more about who they are, and what they believe in, and therefore what it is that they are, that this candidate might be beholden to them for, and whether or not that aligns with my values. So I do want to point out also that you can go over here and look at the candidates very specifically. There's a little tab here for candidate. And I can see there's some of the things I'm just going to point out that I find interesting. Okay, so here's your incumbent, Steve Chabot. 7.04% of the money that he has is coming from small individual contributions. And how does that line up with his challenger, Kate Schroeder? Well, she's got 15.95%. So she is definitely pulling in more of like the individuals who are not super wealthy. And I think that's kind of interesting. The other thing that I wanted that jumped out here is the Pac Contributions. And you have 38.23% are coming for the incumbent versus 8.07. So that's a pretty big difference right there that I might be interested in thinking about. I can also see who are the contributors. And the reason I might be interested in doing that is, okay, so let's say I'm interested in Cintas Corp is one of the big contributors to Steve Chabot. If I go in here, it's going to tell me some information about them. Like, who is this group that is giving him a decent amount of money? Who are they supporting? And we see here who they're supporting and how much. We also can see like the recipients. This is going to tell us kind of like, okay, they really do almost all, not all, but almost all of the people they give money to are Republicans. So they are definitely leaning heavily on that side of the house. And I might be very interested in seeing things like, what are the committees that they are sending money to, and what's their lobbying? So in this case, you can see how much money they are spending lobbying Congress. And you can also see what is it that they're lobbying about. And that might be information that might make a difference to me as I am trying to make decisions, especially in a race in which there is a lot of outside money. And in this race, there is a lot of outside money. And you can see here again, like, you know, it is not surprising an incumbent typically will have more from the local businesses. But I do find there's some differences that are interesting, like Emily's list. Their entire gig is trying to get women elected. So that's kind of a different use case than some others. And like here, she's got some from Planned Parenthood, depending on how I feel about the issue around abortion and, you know, women's rights, fetus rights, whatever, that might make a big difference in how I vote. So that is basically what is here for Open Secrets. There's a lot of great information and I encourage you to go explore it. Catherine, is there anything that we missed? You're muted.
I'd just like to say I'd like to get through one Zoom session without ever anybody telling me that I'm muted, but I haven't done it so far. And also to remember to plug in my laptop before. The only other thing I wanted to say is Open Secrets does get most of its information from the Federal Election Commission, and the Federal Election Commission now has a website that's much more friendly than it was in the past. So you should also go to F, like Frank, ec.gov and compare candidates and see where the money, try to follow the money there as well. So I think that concludes what I have to offer, Gwendolyn.
And me as well. And I just want to also say, you know, if you have questions, please come to the library website and use our chat function. You can also email, there's an email on there. You can email me directly, but if so, you want to put something really obvious in your subject line, so I don't think you're trying to get me to give money to a campaign, because I don't want to overlook somebody. So my email is grease@american.edu.
Right, and my email is ray, like the sunshine, @american.edu. We also have a general reference inbox that's called research@american.edu. But I do highly recommend that you start with chat. It's 24/7 right now, even on election day, which AU has declared as a faculty, staff, and student holiday, so that everybody can contemplate voting. But we do hope that by November 3rd, you've already voted.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much for
Vote
paying
early. Vote early.
and for being the hope for the future.
Absolutely. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we will be posting this shortly.
Thank you.
Great. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.